macro, and I have an affinity for older folks. I didn't think that I would bond in the way that I did with some of the kiddos coming through the food bank, especially at Christmas time when we did gifts for low-income families. That was like really special.
Would you consider parts of this experience macro and part direct, or do you feel like it's all a direct practice experience?
I feel like it's both, definitely. The food bank is bursting at the seams, so policy and developing policy is a big piece to it. That's usually what we do in staff meetings, and at the community meetings, that's definitely macro, connecting with all the other agencies in the county.
And would you say that about 1/3 macro, 2/3 direct practice?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Next question. How was your supervisory experience?
It was fantastic. I had a really unique experience. My field instructor went to Metro, graduated with her MSW in 2015, and I was graduating with my undergrad here in social work in 2015 also. So that's how we met, and then now she's ended up being my supervisor. So it's really cool to have someone who has the specific experience of going through Metro's programs.
I think some of the participants are asking, saying they need permissions. I think they mean to record it. I don't know that they mean to ask comments. I would like the group to know that I'm recording this session and I can share it out later. But if you have a chat, that's a way to ask a question. Okay, one last question we have time for. How many interns from different schools are working at Broomfield Fish?
Just me. This is the first year this internship has been offered. We kind of carved out the path for it. I had been here in my undergrad, but it's almost a completely different agency. They switched buildings, their capacity has grown. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're going to shift gears and move into a presentation from Amelia Foster, who's at an elementary school in Larimer County.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amelia, are you on the line?
Yep.
Awesome. Hi.
Hi.
And will you have a PowerPoint to share?
Yep, I'm trying to figure out how to share it.
I mean, the tech part of this is really the challenge of the whole presentation.
Okay.
Oh, you started a screen share. Good job. Okay, there, you're on.
Okay. I don't know how to get the play slideshow now. Okay. And you're going to record this and get it to our field instructors? So
yes. I've also asked that the presenters send a copy of their PowerPoint to their field instructor.
Yeah, I did that. It just said also to record it. So,
okay. Yes.
Cool. My name is Amelia Foster. I'm at Winona Elementary School in Loveland, Colorado, which is part of the Thompson School District. Winona is a K through school with about 390 students, which is one of the bigger elementary schools in the district. We have both a learning center and intensive learning center program, which most people know as special ed, the different levels. We are a Title I school, which means that at least 40% of our students come from low-income households. It also means that we get a full-time counselor who is my task supervisor at the school. And then we have a psychologist for 80% of the time, which is a pretty high percentage for an elementary school, at least in our district. All of our students get free breakfast. We have a truancy prevention specialist who works with the school and is in the school one full day a week, actually. And then we're also on turnaround status, which means that the school was not performing as well as the state wanted them to within the last few years. And so there's a multiple year plan in place to get the students back on track. So our principal actually came in after our school went on to turnaround status, and she has a really big focus on mental health. So we have a really big mental health team, which includes myself, my supervisor, which is the school counselor. We have a behavioral coach, the psychologist. We have a social emotional coach. She brings in a lot of different trauma trainings for the teachers. And then there's social and emotional learning times built into the day. So instead of just focusing solely on getting the academics back on track, we're really addressing a lot of the other needs of the students to kind of make that a whole child process. Some of the things I do in a day, I do a lot of crisis response for both behavioral and mental health things. We do a lot more suicide screenings than I would have ever imagined an elementary school to do. My supervisor and I do probably about 1 to 2 a week, and then some risk assessments as well. I do some one-on-one student check-ins on my own. I'm helping run 2 lunch bunch social emotional learning groups, and then my capstone is also focused on a 3rd girls group, which I do on my own. I do some psychoeducation with teachers and then sometimes with parents or even students themselves, especially around regulation techniques and trauma. I participate in creating behavior and safety plans. We have about 10% of our students on some sort of behavior and or safety plan, which is a pretty high number for an elementary school. I also coordinate with Kids Pack, which is a nonprofit here in Loveland that provides weekend meals for food insecure families. So I do the numbers for that, get the packs out to the kids. We've also had some like boot and coat drives, and I do a lot of that, making sure all the kids got their right sizes and that kind of thing. And then I am part of the district-wide psychological response team, which is like if there's a big event in the district and they need additional mental health support to go in, that's what that team does. So like if there were a suicide or something like that. Luckily, we haven't had any big responses this year, which is especially lucky based on the fact that the team is kind of in a renaissance period and we don't have a specific basis for our responses. So we're like starting from the bottom and building all that up again, which is actually really cool to be part of. It's more macro than I thought I would do, but I'm enjoying it. I do some home visits for IEP, social histories, some functional behavior assessments. I've done some parent engagement projects at the district. And then I am part of this district-wide meetings as individual and group supervision with district-level social workers. So my field instructor is a district-level social worker, and then my task supervisor is the school counselor. Some roles and skills I've developed listed here. I'm not going to pull them all out, but some I've been really surprised about. I do a lot more brokering than I thought. We do a lot of referring kids to mental health services outside of school, as well as like trying to help with housing and that kind of thing, more than I thought would happen in an elementary school. Research, I'm doing my capstone project, like I said, on one of the groups I'm running. However, a lot of school-based interventions have to have be able to be showing like we are doing this intervention with fidelity before the kid can move up to a different level of intervention. And so it's actually a lot more research than I would have thought was going to sneak into a kind of direct practice role. And then, like I said, the policy creation part of the psychological response team is something that surprised me a lot, but I've really enjoyed. Some of the values I think play most into my role is empathy. All these families are working hard to get their kids where they need to be. And sometimes seeing the traumatic situations our kids come from, it's easy to think like, wow, how could you let that happen to your kid? But it's really coming back into it with that empathy and recognizing like the parents are also doing the best they can. The kids are doing the best they can even when they're struggling that much at school. So it's really coming in with that empathetic mindset. And then dignity and worth of the person kind of goes with that same thing, seeing that family through that lens of understanding where they're coming from, understanding a lot of these things are historical and keep going through the families, and we're trying to break those cycles with them, but it's not always as easy as it seems like it should be sometimes. And then just building those human relationships and having those relationships with kids are what keep the kids coming back and keep them engaged in school. So that was a lot. So
great job. Okay, so I want to open it up for foundation year questions. And if you type in the comment box, I will read it out. Or if you bravely want to take yourself off mute, you can ask directly the questions yourself. But just specifically, I guess, what's one modality or treatment approach you got specialized training in to do this work?
I mean, I don't have specialized treatment per se in like cognitive behavioral therapy, but I feel like we do a lot of like reframing and helping the kids kind of reset their thinking, because a lot of times kids just get into a certain mindset, and it's a lot easier to change that mindset than it is to like go back to the beginning and be like, what happened when you were 2 that made you think you're worthless? It's really teaching them to say like, I'm not worthless. I can do this, this, and this, even if I'm struggling with this. So I don't have like specialized training in it, but I feel like it comes through a lot in the day-to-day work.
Right. Some of those cognitive behavioral therapy approaches. How many employees are in your school district? Or maybe it's in your elementary school. I'm not sure. You probably don't know about the district.
I don't know about the district at all. The school, let's see, we've got about 2 to 3 teachers per grade. And then our mental health team, I mean, I'd say probably 40 people. I don't know if they're talking about interns. There's about 8 or 9 interns this semester.
Oh, cool. And then are there particular social work concepts or theories that you feel like the school really values, that kind of the school aligns with social work values?
Like I said, it's actually been really cool to work with the mental health team there, because like the principals aren't always like trained in mental health concepts, but her recognition of trauma and what goes on behind like a traumatized mind and whatever has been really cool and really impacts the school. I don't know that that's a case everywhere in the district, but I know that she's really tried to bring that into our school at least.
So really that trauma lens. So one last question, what trauma education does the social emotional specialist utilize? Like, is there a trauma framework or lens they're using with the teachers and the students?
Honestly, we have to take it back pretty basic a lot of times. That's actually something that's come as a surprise to me, is that teachers don't receive more trauma training in their education. And so it's really going back to, well, like the kid is operating from like lizard brain right now, and we can't just talk them through that. We have to like go back to that place with them. So it's a lot of those basic comments or those basic concepts. And we have a couple just different trauma people in the district who come in and kind of help teachers work through some of those. And it comes out more in like having our behavioral coach come in, looking at individual children and kind of helping. It's easier to do it with an example. So it's easy to say, like, when he runs out like this is clearly a fight or flight kind of thing for him. So it's having those individual kid examples has been really helpful in that.
And are some of those folks trained are they LCSW social workers, you think?
None of the behavior coaches or social emotional are that we have right now in my school or that come into our school. One of the trauma trainers is for sure. I think probably both of them are. And then all the district level social workers are, and a lot of the other the social workers in the district do have to have their LCSW. So yes, they all are in the district.
Thank you so much, Amelia. That was great. You covered a lot in a short amount of time. You gave a really good example of school social work. So we're going to switch gears to Dylan Duran, who's also at an elementary school in Jefferson County. Crowds go wild for Dylan. Yay.
Hello.
Do you hear the cheering crowds?
I do, yes. I hear some crowds. I have a PowerPoint.
Are you having a PowerPoint or are you?
I do.
Okay.
I have a PowerPoint, yep. So I'll just kind of share my screen. All right. Is it working? Yeah? Good?
Sorry, I muted myself. You look great.
Okay. All right, perfect.
Okay.
All right, it's perfect. So this year I've been interning at Stevens Elementary School, which has been a great experience. So just a little details just about Stevens in general. So it's located in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. It's part of Jefferson County Public Schools. It serves kindergarten through 5th grade, and we have around 350 students. And just like Amelia, it's a Title I school, so a lot of people who are living in poverty and stuff. There's about 90% of the students who are on free or reduced lunch. It's a very also diverse community. There's a lot of different different ethnicities and stuff. So the 70% of the student population identifies as Hispanic or Latino. And then just my primary roles and responsibilities at Stevens, I just kind of listed down. So the main thing that I do is I do individual and group sessions with students. So they're usually geared towards different things. So some of them times are self-harm, sometimes it's anger management, other times it's kind of just more social skills, so learning how to get along with others, resolving conflicts, self-esteem. And so I have a certain caseload every semester, and it kind of changes as students um, see fit. So like if someone grows a lot and they are evaluated, then we can exit them from it and then take on different students. Then we also, through the building, a big practice is restorative practice. So I do a lot of restorative conferences, which is helping students resolve conflicts throughout the day without using punitive punishment. I also do this thing they call SEL support, which is social emotional learning support for students and staff. So if there's a student in class who is struggling with behavior things or stuff like that, I'll kind of go in there and do a little bit of social emotional learning work with the students and support the staff in that way. I'm also able to evaluate and provide feedback during the MTSS meeting, which is the multi-tiered support systems. So we look at evidence, use evidence-based research to help formulate interventions to implement with students with the feedback of the administration, teachers, and the mental health team. And then over time throughout the weeks, we evaluate them, see how they're going, and make adjustments if necessary. I've also gotten to do IEPs, which are individual education plans, some behavior intervention plans, functional behavior assessments, threat assessments, and suicide risk assessments. So I can't actually do really any of those on my own because I'm not licensed and not an LCSW, but I'm able to sit in on the process and offer insight and stuff and learn in that way. And then I also do a duty in what they call the hub, which is a community resource center. So this is a way for the school to connect with the community and help provide access to resources for empowerment. So on site there is a little mini food bank, clothing and hygiene products, school supplies for any families in the district. All they have to do to be eligible to receive services is have a student in JEFCO. And then there's also a little bit of case management involved with families to help link them to other resources in the area. So if they need more stuff with housing or gas passes, things like that, then we can connect them to that. And then just to kind of summarize like a little reflection, I feel like at my internship this year, I've done a lot of learning just about kind of the school social work role and like the picture, the vital link between linking the student from school, home, and the community, and making sure that it's a culturally diverse and competent area for students to succeed in and provide them with the resources that they may need. And I've had a lot of opportunities. I get to, like Amelia was saying too, actually, we do a lot of suicide risk assessments, probably about 2 a week too. And I get to sit on IEP meetings, and the whole staff is kind of really supportive, and they know that I'm doing an internship. So if there's something that they think would be beneficial, then they'll just kind of reach out and ask if I'd like to sit in on a parent meeting or things like that. I feel like I've also grown a lot in my professional experience. I feel like last year in my undergrad internship, I didn't get to do as much as I did this year. So I feel like I've really gotten to grow and gain a lot of experience and learn kind of what a school-based social work role looks like. So yeah, I think I'm just right at 5 minutes. So
perfect. Well, Dylan, I'm going to open it up so folks can either chat a question and I'll read it, or they can take their microphone off. I'd just like to ask, describe your supervisory relationship and what works in that, and any adjustments you've had to make supervision work for you.
Yeah, supervision is actually really good. She's really good about making sure we do an hour a week. I don't have a task supervisor, so I just have the field instructor who is on site. So we meet every week, and I always bring a kind of almost like a journal or something that I keep about my entire caseload, and then we kind of go through, look at the theoretical frameworks we're using, ask questions, and it's really kind of more of a um, person-centered approach. I think that we do for supervision, and
Nice.
she never really like belittles me or thinks that I'm not doing, good. So we work together.
And would you say it's a bilingual school, or is it not, does not have that bilingual designation?
I don't know if it has a bilingual designation. I know there's a lot of students who are bilingual, and we have a ESL teacher and a whole ESL program and stuff.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Did you receive training before the school year started on some of these things like the restorative circles and IEP process, or did all your training begin after you started your internship?
So I actually interned with Jefferson County in a different capacity, in a different role, in a different agency. So I'd had some training already with truancy and restorative practice, but I've done another more extensive training this year that's in restorative practice so that I could learn how to do that effectively. And I've gone to a special mental health day just for how to work with students who are gifted and talented. And I've done just a lot of different trainings. They always are open to sending me to them.
Do you feel like the experience you're getting in a school, that those are transferable skills to other social work roles outside of schools?
I do. I think they probably are, just because you're like during supervision and throughout all your work, you're always using, the ethical guidelines and the NASW Code of Ethics to help guide your work. So I think it's definitely, there's some things that are specific to schools, I think. But even then, like if you're a caseworker for a student and they're on an IEP, you're going to kind of know that too. So I think it works through other
Transferable skills.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Talk a little bit about working with a population of students, 70% who are Latino. Sort of what's the multicultural lens you use, and is this a newer experience for you?
So I worked in in my other agency, I worked in a primarily Latino or Hispanic population as well. So I think it's just always good to build your cultural competence when working with diverse populations, especially when they're different from me, and making sure to be very culturally humble and respectful of other norms and cultures.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to shift gears, and Zayas, are you on the call?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm going to invite you to step forward and put myself on mute. Do you have a PowerPoint?
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
Let me figure out how to share it. Okay, am I sharing?
You are good.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Thais Magallon, and I am down in Pueblo, Colorado, so just a few hours south of you guys. And I'm interning with the Special Victims Unit with the Pueblo Police Department. And this is a little overview on the Special Victims Unit. So they usually investigate crimes against children under the age of 18, elderly adults over the age of 65, people who have mental incapacities, victims of domestic violence, and runaways, amongst other populations. The unit consists of 4 detectives right now, and it is open up to 6 detectives, but right now they have 4. They have 2 women and 2 men, and their sergeant. And every year they get about 400 to 600 referrals, and how the referrals work is that, and if any other unit in the Pueblo Police Department gets a case where they feel like any of these populations are being affected or there's a crime against them, they always refer it over, and we get all the runaway cases even though they are non-criminal. The other units that I work for, that I have participated with, are so SVU falls under the investigations unit, which is made up of the SVU, crimes against properties and crimes against persons. And I have gotten the opportunity to work a lot with crimes against persons and ACOVA, which is their Victims Assistance and Advocacy Program. And I've I really appreciate both opportunities. They're really, really great. And Crimes Against Persons basically covers any other crime that with any adult person. So usually homicides, assaults, robberies, and crimes like that. What I usually do, so during this internship, I've been mainly focused on creating some sort of runaway resource guide. And the resource guide that I've been creating is for my capstone project. So that one is going to be resources mainly for runaway youth or youth who are homeless, and specifically youth who run away habitually, so who tend to find themselves in this situation frequently. And what it is, it's going to have many different resources about different food banks, mental health services, 24/7 services that don't need parental consent or are free of charge. And the guide will have all of this information in there with hopes of keeping these youth safe when they are not with a parent or where they find themselves on the streets. And Pueblo does not have a resource guide for this population, so this is something that we are going to be able to share with different agencies in town. And through my internship, I've also been able to observe and participate in interviews with victims, with alleged offenders, with witnesses, and other people. And so the detectives usually conduct the interviews, and they do open it up for me to be able to interject or add any questions that I deem necessary or ask for clarification on the person being interviewed. So that's really given me a lot of experience, and I really appreciate that because it's really allowed me to dive into the internship and get that full experience. I've also been able to observe their crisis intervention. So they do have a COVA, which is, again, their advocacy program, and that program works with, so they go on the scene of crimes, and they work with anyone who is going through that crisis. And for that, they always offer them resources, and they can help them out when they're in any sort of crisis situation, as well as all the other personnel are also trained in crisis intervention. And I've also gotten the experience of going to crime scenes, to the hospitals, to attend court. And I did do, for my undergrad, one of my degrees was in Spanish. So I have been able to translate materials, and I've been a great resource for them. So I've been able to translate for the detectives and for the patrol officers when they're on the scene of a crime or when families come to us. And I've also gotten the opportunity to present for their police academies. So take any information such as minimal facts information. So those are kind of interviewing techniques, and help teach that to the police academies and teach them the different resources for the runaways as well. And just the different knowledge, values, and skills that I see being emphasized during this internship is mainly the resources. So I'm the first intern that they've had up in the investigations, and they've never had a social worker up there, just an actual social worker working in social work. So they've been able to utilize me a lot and they always kind of send their families over to me if their families need counseling resources or different kinds of resources, even like clothing assistance, food assistance, and things like that. So I think that kind of adds into helping them and fulfilling that competency for them. Also, I've gained some interviewing skills from observing them. They do conduct forensic interviews as well as they do motivational interviewing. So I've gained some skills from actually observing them, and I have been working in an interdisciplinary team, so I've gotten to know a lot of different professionals in town. So they work with mental health, medical providers, prosecution, and just different units, of course. And I am now open for questions.
Before, if you want to courageously take yourself off microphone, you're welcome to. Otherwise, I will read them. The first question I have is a rollover from the last one. Talk about interface with child welfare and what roles you've played with regards to partnering with child welfare?
Yes. So with the Special Victims Unit, most of their clients are, most of the population is families with children who are being abused in some way. So we always work with social services and with their child welfare unit, and we have really close relationships with them. We have been able to refer cases to them, they refer cases to us, and when we go out into the field to contact a family or an alleged offender, or to go do a contact in the home and a welfare check, we work together with them, and we always invite each other to those things. So I've gotten the opportunity to contact them and get case updates and actually go on in the field with them. So that's been quite an experience. I've never been with social services.
Did you bring specialty skills or training to this unique role? Like you said, they're not used to working in partnership with a social worker, and you've offered sort of a new lens and perspective and skill set they had. Did you need to come into this with some other training that other social workers might not have?
So I got this internship. I used to work at a child advocacy center, and with that, we worked very closely with the Special Victims Unit, and I worked closely with the interdisciplinary team that we work closely with as well. So I kind of went in there and I requested an internship, and they accepted me because I had all of this prior knowledge to investigations through them, through my work at the Child Advocacy Center. So it was kind of that, and just being in social work, being in that sort of field, I think that kind of enticed them to accept me. They were a little more willing to accept me.
And so when you think about social work maybe has a different reputation with law enforcement, what are some of the cons or the challenges in being the only social worker in a sort of a correction setting?
Yes. So a challenge that I've seen is a lot of the time, so not the detectives that I work directly under, but a lot of the other detectives have a very conservative point of view. So when they talk about some of the clients, they have a very negative mindset going in, and it's kind of that whole, they have those stereotypes with their clients, and they have just very conservative points of views. So they don't, bringing in the social work perspective has helped some of them.
Has it been a challenge to advocate for that perspective and challenge some sort of stereotypes?
Somewhat. They have been awesome, and they've been super respectful of different opinions. So that's been the great part. I have been, whenever they interject and they add this, I try to add a social work and a different perspective to it, and try to kind of see the hope in it, see the bright side, and see how we can better help somebody.
And thank you for correcting me on the saying of your name, Thais. I appreciate it.
You're fine. It happens all the time.
One last question. What therapeutic modalities are you finding useful? You mentioned motivational interviewing and some interviewing techniques, but just to end your session, what are some of the specific maybe tools or techniques you're using?
So for the interviewing piece, mostly for children, what I've learned is how they interview children. And what they do is really, really open-ended questions. They can't ask anything direct. So for example, if there is an allegation of child abuse, they can't ask any direct questions. They can't say, oh, did you get this bruise because you fell, for example. They have to ask them open-ended questions like, what happened? And can you explain a little bit of what happened? Can you tell me about your relationships? Can you tell me about a full day, for example, just to make sure that they are able to narrate a full day and to narrate a story. And those are just different skills that I've been picking up on and taking with me. And they're things that I wouldn't have thought of.
Like forensic interviewing techniques, kind of?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, one student, and I know we're out of time with you, is saying, would you say this would be a hard profession for women? Would it have unique challenges?
I think more women need to be in this. I think it would be very, very helpful. Upstairs in the investigations unit, there are about 30 detectives and only 2 of them are women. I think the victims, the populations that we serve could benefit from having more women up there.
Thank you. This was a great presentation. We're going to end this one so we can do our very last one, who is my student, Maria. Are you still with us, Maria?
Yes.
We got to see you driving. Are you driving? You made it home.
I was driving.
Yay. Well, tell the rest of the group about Federal Heights Elementary School, because I'm probably the only one that's visited there. Are you doing a PowerPoint or just speaking?
Yes, but I don't know how to.
Hover down by the bottom. Do you see a green box that says share?
Yes. Oh,
You did it. You're good. I'm going to put myself on mute now.
okay. How do I start this? Okay. Can you guys see the
We
presentation?
can see it. You're good. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, Federal Heights Elementary. My name is Maria, guys. This is an elementary school. I feel, oh, yes, this is an elementary school. And sorry, there we go. It's in Federal Heights Elementary is in Adams 12 school district, and they are a school for kindergarten through 5th grade. They are mainly Hispanic, and there's like 90% Hispanic and 9.4% white. Students do qualify for free reduced lunch at 89.7%, which is literally ranked the highest free reduced lunch in Federal Heights as well as Adams 12. In 2018, they were calculated at an average score of 6.11 performing school. So they are one of the lowest performing schools in Colorado, and we're ranked 99.3% of elementary schools. That was the lowest, and 33 elementary schools in Adams 12, again, the lowest. If you can see these pictures, you can see the lowest scores. So definitely working with children who are mainly Spanish speaking. So I think that's part of the reason why, as a lot of the teachers are only English speaking and a lot of the students speak Spanish. So it's kind of hard for them right now.
So to clarify, it's not a bilingual school.
No, it is mainly English. So, but it is hard for children that mainly speak Spanish. But they definitely work with the students there. This school is in a turnaround stage, which they're currently working on an intervention and framework for the next 2 years, and they just started the process the 2018 school year. So they are hoping that works. So a lot of the assessments that we do here, we do suicide assessments, we do threat assessments, we do behavioral intervention plan assessments, functional behavior assessments. We use those 2 when observing students for IEPs. We do ABCs, a behavioral analysis, definitely looking at their behavior in the classroom. We do behavior rating intervention of executive functioning assessments. We do EDDT, emotional disturbance decision tree assessments. We do the BASC-3, which is the behavior assessment system for children, the Conners 3, and the Vinland. And I actually have observed some of these, or all of these, should I say, and I'm actually starting to help with suicide assessments. I've been doing a lot of observations for the BIP, FBA, and ABCs, and I just scored my first EDDT, which definitely we found the student was going to need special education services. That also leads to the IEP individual education plans and 504 plans, which a lot of these assessments that we do are used to evaluate students here. So we do a lot of the IEPs, and if a student qualifies for special education, they have an IEP in place. And so a lot of what I'm doing at the school is observing for initial evaluations, annual reviews, which they're done every year, and reevaluations, which are done every 3 years. But we have IEPs weekly with parents, and a lot of the stuff that I do is observations, doing 20-minute to 30-minute observations in the classroom, focusing on the maladaptive behaviors and concerns and emotional and social concerns of these students. And again, using a lot of the assessments, especially the FBA and ABC, and collecting that data and putting it into the IEP. We also get a lot of the teacher rating forms, and we create a lot of the SMART goals based on what the teacher's saying and based off of the observations we are making. And definitely working with the families to make sure that these goals and everything sounds right for parents. An IEP is different from a 504 only because 504, the child doesn't have special education or a disability, but still needs assistance for getting assistance and making accommodations for them so they can be successful in the class and access the same material as their peers in the classroom, since a lot of their learning is being affected from their behavior. So I do work at a macro, micro, and meso here in social work because I am working both providing both individual, small group, and whole class interventions. A lot of the groups focus on interventions for social skills, self-regulation, executive functioning, social-emotional skills, especially using that therapeutic approach, cognitive behavioral therapy, and a lot of evidence-based research. So a lot of the classroom stuff that I do is I work with a lot of the K through second grade classrooms, and I go teach them second step curriculum. And that's a lot of to do with like bullying and understanding how to listen and focus, and a lot of what they should be doing in class to listen and stay on top and focus. The Superflex curriculum is an evidence-based curriculum that I work with a lot of the groups with, especially a lot of the boys groups and girls groups that I do. This also helps teach and promote social emotional and a lot of positive behavior in the classroom as well as in the society. I also identify the needs of the students, again, doing those observations, and then try to ensure their educational success by attending the parent-teacher conferences. There's 3 this year, so we actually have one next week that I'll be attending, so I can make sure I'm also meeting the goals for them in the classroom. I also help a lot with the teachers and the students to overcome barriers, because a lot of the times their behavior is so aggressive or so upset that they are disrupting the class. So definitely working with them on STAR behavior, that second step curriculum, and working with them about bullying and keeping their hands to themselves. We do have a daily behavior chart that we work towards so that they can get a reward at the end of the day if they did good with their behavior and where they're supposed to be and doing their work. We also put that in a lot of data collection to see how their progress is and their behavior in the classroom. And a lot of what I do also does a lot of like listening skills and ORs and motivational interviewing, and definitely working with the students. My capstone is focused on a single system design on one of the groups that I'm doing to see if the reward system changes the student's behavior from negative to positive using a therapeutic and cognitive behavioral therapy approach. And last, some more things that I do here. As a social worker, they help a lot with the crisis interventions in the school. Like before I told you, a lot of the students in the classroom, they have negative behavior. So some of the students are running out of the classroom when they don't want to be in class, or even running out of the school. So definitely trying to focus on these crisis intervention. We put a lot of children in holds because they're hitting other kids, or they're hurting themselves, or they're trying to hurt the therapist. So you do have to be certified for that. So I can't help with holds, but I do try to just hold the door shut. That's basically all I can do, but definitely looking at that and observing exactly what a social worker
Maria,
does.
do you mind if we stop and turn to questions just so we don't run out of
Yeah.
time? So
Yeah.
I was about to ask that question of hold. So there's a benefit to you just being the person who knows how to hold a door. You don't have to be certified for that. Do you see any downside to being in a school that does have that sort of high behavior need where professionals have to be trained and do holds frequently, or what's your thought on that?
To be honest, when I go to the district meetings, our school does have the highest crisis. So I didn't think I was going to go into a school that had so much crisis, but I actually feel it's very beneficial to see this and actually help the therapist when I can.
Do you think that the school is equipped to meet the Spanish-speaking needs of the student population and families they're serving? Or do you feel like they're offering enough sort of culturally responsive Spanish services and interventions?
I do, only because there's like one or two students that speak Spanish, and when I do go into the schools to teach second step, I actually teach it in English and Spanish if I know there's more than two kids in there that speak Spanish. I know some of the teachers try to do things in Spanish and provide them with at least a Spanish copy of what they're doing, but they're also teaching them how to speak English, and I do feel that they are meeting their needs. And definitely, the school is definitely trying to recognize and identify these students and their school performance based on their language.
And what about within the context of like being culturally responsive? Do you think sometimes there's misses with that?
I do, only because the teachers are all Spanish speaking. So then when it does come to like the parent teacher conferences, they do have interpreters, but I feel like a lot of the times the interpreter doesn't interpret necessarily everything to the parent as it should be.
Describe your supervisory experience.
It's actually really great. So she's the only therapist in the school, as all the schools in Adams County only have one therapist in the school. Sorry. And being able to have her next to me and actually ask her questions. We do supervision every Monday mornings, which also help to see what our schedule is going to look like for that week. Our schedule does change only because of crises that do come up, but it's actually a very positive experience with her. And allowing me to do a lot of this.
So your last question, so the group can transition into their evening. Are there macro changes, community policies changes that you think could be made to help support students in a primarily low income demographic and primarily like Spanish speaking family population?
So I haven't really looked at the policies. I know that's one thing that we're going to be looking at to see if the interventions are going to be working that they're using for the turnaround stage. But I haven't really worked on that until this semester.
Okay. So it's a little early for you to comment on like community policy changes that would be beneficial, it sounds like. One last question came in. Do you feel like your school district, the Adams 12, has enough psych and social work resources for the amount of assessments and the level of need that is in the district?
Yes, I do.
They're responsive.
Mm-hmm. They're very responsive.
So overall, is there any surprise or takeaway? We had 3 different presenters on school-based experiences, and I know you also work in community mental health. What would one takeaway about a school-based experience for a future concentration year student be?
Definitely recognizing the oppression and socioeconomic justice that the students face, only because a lot of the students come from neighborhoods or households that have a lot of challenges that are outside of school. So definitely trying to meet those in the school.
Right. So you're trying to teach people who have experienced a lot of trauma, which is a challenge. So thank you so much, our 5 concentration year students, Cassidy, Amelia, Dylan, Thais, and Maria. You guys put so much thought and time in, and 3 of those were school-based. So I'm sort of hopeful that some of my foundation year participants had been curious about schools or are thinking about schools, and or just really enjoyed learning about social work in corrections or social work in like a community basic needs center like Fish is. So if you're struggling with your little scavenger hunt and you're one of the foundation students and you feel like, I don't feel like I got 6 questions answered, you can message me and I'm happy to discuss that with you. You're welcome to join 1 or 2 presenters at another session tomorrow if any of those interest you. But I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to carve out and to be fully present here for the last hour. Have a great night.